Hey, how can you bury a body 3 times? That's what this great Western we're going to talk about today is about. The Three Burials of Melquiades Estrada, directed by the great actor Tommy Lee Jones. Let me tell you why this movie is great, how to watch it, and what it might mean. Coming up next. So The Three Burials of Melquiades Estrada is a 2005 Western directed by and starring Tommy Lee Jones. The movie is set in modern-day Texas circa the early 2000s. It features a character named Pete, played by Jones, who is an old townie. He's got a Mexican friend who wanders over the border on horseback named Melquiades Estrada. One day, as the movie shows us in the opening, Melquiades is shot. 2 men in the desert find him dead. Question is why, and Pete really wants justice for his friend. He wants to find out the killer. Well, the local sheriff's department doesn't give him any help. And so Pete, finding a couple clues, figures out that a new Border Patrol agent on the U.S.-Mexico border, Tom Norton, played by the great Barry Pepper, is the one who shot Melquiades. Now, even though the death was presumably accidental, as we see in the movie, Pete is hot out for vengeance. He goes and kidnaps Tom Norton, he takes him to unearth the body of Melquiades, and the 3 of them go on horseback across the Rio Grande into Mexico to rebury Melquiades in his hometown of Jimenez, Mexico. Now that's the general plot of this movie, but it's a very complex movie told with all kinds of timelines mixed together, lots and lots of flashbacks, and flashbacks you cannot necessarily trust. This looks like your standard Western. Here's a man named Pete out for justice. He's willing to risk breaking the law and in fact becomes an outlaw during the movie. The police try to hunt him down as he kidnaps a Border Patrol agent, and he wants justice for his good friend. We've seen this tale a lot in the Westerns and the movies. A sort of buddy road trip. The hero becomes an outlaw, out for justice, and there's salvation and redemption possible in this movie. As well as the landscapes. This takes place in South Texas, northern Mexico. You get adventures on horseback, you get rattlesnakes, you get encounters with odd and strange people out in the desert. So this looks like a classical Western. It has the structure and feel of it. But you need to know this movie is far more complicated than just that. This is one of my favorite Westerns ever. Jones has directed 3 movies. All 3 are excellent, and I will put them in this great movie series. He was an English major at Harvard once upon a time. He wrote a senior thesis on the Catholicism of Flannery O'Connor's works, the great Southern American writer. And his movies all have this flair. They sort of mix together, in fact, I think, O'Connor's writings, Cormac McCarthy, and his own sort of sensibilities. Now, when I've seen this movie, it takes me about an hour and a half even to sort of understand all the vast complexities going on here. This looks like a simple tale of justice, as I said, and social justice, where a man tries to get revenge for a dead Mexican immigrant. This looks like, in fact, a Mexican immigrant versus Border Patrol agent narrative in which the Border Patrol agent is in the wrong. It seems like a simple ideological movie about social justice and wanting that for illegal immigrants, that is, Mexican immigrants who cross the Mexico-U.S. border. But wait, there is more. For one thing, the movie is about the small town near the border that all of these characters inhabit. It shows us Border Patrol agent Tom Norton and his wife moving from Cincinnati, Ohio to this sleepy town, and instantly they're bored. Instantly they lead very dull lives. Norton's wife, played by January Jones, has nothing to do. He says he's going to buy her a Nintendo to entertain her. They look terribly bored in this town. Now, they're the newcomers in it. We also see the old townies, and they too look bored. For example, there's a waitress, a key character at the restaurant what almost all these characters go to. She's married to the cook at the restaurant, but she's also prostituting herself to the local sheriff, to the Tommy Lee Jones character, and others. She claims to be in love with everybody. She says she's in love with the Tommy Lee Jones character first. Clearly she's having sex with other men just to get over the boredom in the town. Well, she sucks Tom Norton's wife into her vortex and has this January Jones character also end up starting to prostitute herself. As it turns out, Norton's wife hooks up with Melquiades Estrada, the man that Norton killed. Thus you have now a layer of irony in this movie. And you've got two pairs of characters. One is the Pete and Tom Norton duo, the older man, the younger man, and they go on a journey together. The other is the waitress character and the Tom Norton character. They are a parallel pair, an older woman and a younger woman. And so this movie brings up generational differences. It brings up the malaise of these small border towns, even just American culture in general. Because another thing you should notice about this movie is it fixates on entertainment. Time and time again, we see the TV turned on, people being bored out of their minds, thus watching TV. In one scene, an older man in Mexico is blind and he has nothing better to do than listen to Mexican radio all day long. That's what keeps him alive. So on the one hand, you have this sort of ancient retribution tale where the two men, Pete and Tom Norton, go on horseback down to Mexico. Pete gets revenge for his friend, and then this other sort of parallel world of modern America, malaise, prostituting yourself, nothing better to do than sit at a restaurant or watch TV all day. Now you see throughout this movie even scenes of the women, and the women are complex, interesting main characters peppered throughout the movie, even while you see Pete and Tom Norton go down to Mexico. The question is, why are they in the movie so much? And I think the answer is, by the end of the movie, you see that pretty much everybody in this movie is delusional in some way. And now we're going to go extra complex, and I'm going to give a big spoiler, so if you don't want to know the end of the movie, don't listen to any more of this video. But giving this away might actually help you watch the movie profitably. What we learn by the end is that this is not a simple social justice tale of bad border agent versus good Mexican immigrant and the guy who's out to get revenge for him. We learn that the Pete character is completely delusional about his friend Melquiades. Either Melquiades has lied to Pete, either Pete is making things up, or maybe, just maybe, Pete never had a relationship with Melquiades. In the end, the flashbacks we see of Pete and Melquiades could be completely false. They could be half true, they could be false memories. There's a lot of possibilities for them, but what we believe to be true at the beginning of the movie when we see Pete and Melquiades together, by the end of the movie, we're doubting everything that we have seen between those two characters. And that's because, of course, by the end of the movie, Pete is proven completely wrong about his friend. His friend, Melquiades, has lied to him about his hometown, about his wife and family. And that means we actually know next to nothing about Melquiades. And that means Pete's quest for revenge, well, it's a quest to avenge a friend who's lied to him, a person who has given him a false identity. And yet we see Pete, knowing that, maintain his deep delusions. And by the end of the movie, he is completely hallucinating, and the Tom Norton character realizes that. The movie brings up the idea that trying to get abstract justice, absolute justice, might mean that we need to be this delusional about the past and about our principles and about who our friends are. And that's a deeply, deeply disturbing thought. We have to lie to ourselves in order to get the pure justice that we seek. Well, that seems true of Pete. And that also might be a criticism, of people who take up causes and they're so blind to everything else, other contexts, the past and history as it was, that they go for the cause like Pete does here without really considering anything else. They literally have to blind themselves to the truth and become self-delusional. Now, this is also a movie about deep suffering. First, Pete's grief at the loss of his friends. Second, at Tom Norton have to suffer, first being beaten up repeatedly in this movie, and sometimes, sadly, hilariously, by other people and events that happen to him as they go on horseback into Mexico. By the end, Tom Norton has suffered a great deal. You almost, maybe you do, side with this character who's accidentally shot Melquiades but has covered up the shooting. Anyway, by the end, Tom Norton is playing along with Pete's delusions and ends up striving for forgiveness and absolving the guilt that he has over killing Melquiades. Again, this is classic Western stuff, but Tom Norton realizes the delusions that Pete has. And thus this movie leads up to, I think, one of the better final lines in movies.
You gonna be alright?
It implies there's some sort of Stockholm syndrome between the two characters. Also that Tom Norton thinks he's been forgiven and is absolved of his guilt and has made a friend. Third, that he's actually now empathetic, or more empathetic than he was at the beginning of the movie, because of this long, arduous, suffering, sort of classic Western journey that he's undertaken. By the end of the movie, we see two different kinds of characters then. The modernist January Jones feminine character leaves the town, while the Tom Norton character is deeply invested in a relationship he didn't care about, in fact was completely antagonistic to at the beginning of the movie, obviously, because he was kidnapped. Thus, now we have a movie where just about every character is upset, delusional, bored, and they need to figure out what life is all about. They have no real grounding for their principles about justice or pleasure or freedom, and they've got to find them somehow. And I think the horseback journey in this movie is giving that, at least to Tom Norton, maybe also to Pete. I find this movie, another reason it might be great is because the Coen brothers have quoted it at least in two movies that they've made. One is No Country for Old Men, but also in True Grit as well. And there's been, I think, a back and forth between Tommy Lee Jones, who made this movie, the Coen brothers make No Country for Old Men, Tommy Lee Jones makes The Sunset Limited, Coens make True Grit, Tommy Lee Jones makes The Homesman. All of these movies, and the Coens make The Ballad of Buster Scruggs. All of these movies are talking to each other, I think, about death, justice, and these big, great ideas that you find in classic Westerns, but these directors and writers really want to probe it in ways that you just don't see very much in modern American culture. Because this movie has such a fascinating structure, complex characters, it redoes the Western, and as it goes, it gets more interesting and deeper. I think this movie is one of the greatest Westerns ever made. Please subscribe to my channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you. Have a great day.